Hi folks, welcome to this PHP tutorial. This time I'm going to be covering includes, the different types of includes and requires, and how they can help you and what they do. Um, so I still have my code up from the last video, and there's a reason why I want to have this. What I'm going to do is I am going to modify this code. So up here I'm going to create a function, call it call it login form. And what this is going to do is it's going to display our login form. Let me modify that. I'll just do display login form, so that way it makes a little more sense. And I'm just going to copy the code from our form last time. Let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So that way you guys can see all the code that we have here. I'll pause for a second. Those of you who need to copy this down, I'll get rid of that blue. And you guys can feel free to copy it. Pause the video at this point, copy it or type it in as you need it, and then pick up where the video takes off right here. So I'm going to copy this, or I'm going to cut it actually, and I'm going to break out of my PHP tags. So I don't want this to be processed as PHP. And now I can paste in my form like this. So now if I want to display my form, I just do display login form. And that should display my form for me nicely over here. If I want to do it twice, call it twice. And I should get my form displayed twice. Very nicely. So I'm going to get rid of this. And I want to set up a function to my processing, or all my form processing. So I'm going to do function process login, and I'm not actually connecting to a database, so I'm not going to do anything with that. So I'm going to wrap this, and here I am going to push this in, and I'm going to pass a variable called post. And what post is going to do, it's going to be the entire post array. So I'm going to replace every $_post that I have with just $post. I'll do that really quickly. Alright, so that should take care of that. So now I have a display login form, and I should do a check. Oops. So we're going to do this. I'm going to pass post to it. And that should be all that we need. So right now we have our login form as a function and our process login as a function. So if I save this and refresh on the page, we just get our our normal login form. And if I type this in, Nicholas and 1234, and click on send, we should get our processing done above that. But this kind of makes our code look ugly. We have all these functions defined at the top, and we don't really want to know what's happening in each of the functions. We just want to have access to them. What we can do is we can create a new file here. So I'm going to right click, new file, and call this includes.php, and click on finish. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a new file, opening and closing PHP, and I am going to go back into my index.php file, and I'm going to cut all of this. So now all I have is my process login and my display login pieces. I'm going to paste them into my includes file, so that's where they reside right now. In my index page, I'm not going to have access to those, so if I refresh my browser over here, it's going to say call the undefined function process login. It doesn't know where those functions reside. So what I need to do is I need to include those files. There are 4 different types of includes. There's just a regular include, and then you specify the file. So we can do includes.php. And now if I test this, go back over to my browser and refresh, I get my access to all of my functions that I created. The drawback with the regular include is you can include the same file multiple times, and you're just going to be loading your server with unneeded data. So they created include once, which solves this problem. It'll check first if it's been included, and if it hasn't, then it'll include the file. So if we save and refresh, then we get the same display. There's include, which will include it, but it doesn't really care if it fails to include it. If it doesn't exist or if there's an issue, then it can continue processing the application. But in our particular instance, we need those functions to exist. So what we can do is we can use require, and require, if that file does not exist, then it's going to stop right there and it's going to stop processing your application. Because this does exist, this display is fine. But if I were to just do include.php and refresh, require include.php, failed to open stream, no such file directory, and it's going to stop right there. And then there's also require once, which does the same thing as include once and makes sure that the file has only been included or brought into our application once, so you don't have additional data that's stored on your server or processes that are happening on your server that aren't needed. So if I refresh, I'll switch this back to includes. Now we have our form all set. If we go back over to our includes page, we can do a function called display menu. And we can echo a link. And we're going to want to go to google.com. All right, so we'll close this, call this Google. All right, so now we have display menu, and if I go back over to my index.php and call display so I have display menu that it resides in my includes piece, and I come back over here, I should see, oh, if I typed it correctly, should see index and Google. Now I want to create a new file. So we're using this display menu on every single file that we have on our page or on our website. So we're going to create a new file, call this one about.php, click on finish, and inside of about we are going to include once, or actually require once. Includes.php, and we're going to display menu. So now in our index file, oops, let me make this a little bit bigger so that way I can read it. We'll do about.php, and we get our index in Google. All that we're doing is we're calling that same function. So if we need to make a change, we can go into our includes piece, go down to where our form is. I'll just make this a little bit bigger. I'm just going to do a couple concatenations here to make it a little bit easier to read. And I'm going to put in another break. Oops. All right, so I just modified that display menu function in one location whoops, let me go back. And if I go back to my original file, the index file, then I get the same output across all my pages. It's an easy way for you to have your code in one location and pull it in where you need it. I would group them up into pieces. Let's say it's all your forms, all your everything related to user functions, all that stuff. You can break it up and include it in different files, so that way you don't have this huge, hard to manage include file. I recommend object-oriented programming over this kind of stuff where you're using includes, but if you don't want to take that approach, this is perfectly okay. The next video, I'm going to be covering sessions and cookies, and after that, we'll be making an application, putting everything together, and we'll be making some use of all this stuff.